Chapter 1. The Enigmatic Invitation. The rain fell in relentless sheets over London, drumming against the windows of Hercule Poirot's impeccably ordered flat at Whitehaven Mansions. It was a dreary afternoon in late autumn, the kind that cloaked the city in a melancholic haze, urging even the most restless souls to seek solace indoors. Inside, the air was warm, fragrant with the scent of polished wood and the faint tang of Poirot's preferred tisane, a blend of herbs that he insisted brought clarity to the mind. The little Belgian detective sat at his mahogany desk, his posture as precise as the ticking of the ormolu clock on the mantelpiece. His small, neat hands were folded atop a pile of correspondence, and his moustache, those magnificent, meticulously groomed whiskers, twitched slightly as he contemplated the letter before him. It was no ordinary letter. Poirot had received many. In his illustrious career, pleas for help, invitations to grand estates, even thinly veiled threats from those who feared his uncanny ability to unravel the most tangled of human motives. But this letter, penned in an elegant, almost archaic hand, was different. It bore no signature, no crest, no overt clue to its sender's identity. The paper was heavy, cream-coloured, with a faint watermark of a thorned vine that Poirot had traced with his fingertip, intrigued by its subtle menace. The words themselves were few, yet they carried a weight that piqued his curiosity and stirred the restless intellect that thrived on the impossible. Monsieur Poirot, your reputation as a man who pierces the veil of mystery precedes you. At Blackthorn Manor, a puzzle awaits, one that defies reason and mocks the ordinary. Come, if you dare, to uncover what lies beyond the grasp of mortal logic. A car will collect you at precisely 9 o'clock on the morning of the 15th. Discretion is paramount. Tell no one. Yours in anticipation. A friend Poirot's green eyes, sharp as a cat's, lingered on the final phrase. A friend, he murmured, his voice soft but resonant with the cadence of his native French. Mais non, mon ami, you are no friend of Hercule Poirot. You are a provocateur, a weaver of enigmas. He tapped the letter against his chin, his mind already dissecting its sparse contents. The date mentioned, tomorrow morning, left little time for deliberation. The absence of a signature was deliberate, a challenge to his deductive powers, and Blackthorn Manor. The name stirred no immediate recognition, though Poirot's memory, as orderly as a filing cabinet, would soon retrieve any relevant detail. He rose from his chair, his movements precise, and crossed to the window. The rain blurred the world beyond, transforming the gaslit street into a watercolour of shadows and fleeting lights, a puzzle that defies reason, the letter had promised. Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. Reason was his domain, his battlefield. No mystery, however labyrinthine, could withstand the relentless logic of Hercule Poirot. Yet the letter's tone, its almost theatrical flourish, suggested a mind that delighted in the game as much as he did. That alone was enough to ensure his acceptance. "George," Poirot called, turning from the window. His valet, a man of impeccable discretion and unflappable calm, appeared promptly in the doorway. "Prepare my travelling case, the black one with the silver fittings. I depart tomorrow morning for an engagement of uncertain duration." "Very good, sir," George replied, his tone as neutral as ever. May I inquire as to the destination?" Poirot's smile widened, though it did not reach his eyes. "You may inquire, mon cher George, but I fear I cannot yet satisfy your curiosity. The destination is Blackthorn Manor, but as to its precise location or purpose—" He waved a hand airily. "That remains to be discovered." George nodded, accustomed to his employer's penchant for the dramatic, and withdrew to make the necessary preparations. Poirot returned to his desk, his thoughts already racing ahead to the journey. He opened a drawer and retrieved a small notebook, its pages filled with his meticulous handwriting. Flipping to a blank page, he began to jot down his observations about the letter, the quality of the paper, the style of the script, the deliberate anonymity. Each detail was a thread in the tapestry of the mystery, and Poirot was determined to weave them together. As the clock struck 6, Poirot set aside his notebook and prepared for dinner. He chose a suit of charcoal grey, its lines as sharp as his intellect, and adjusted his tie with the precision of a surgeon. Dinner was a solitary affair, served by George with the quiet efficiency that Poirot valued. The meal, consommé, followed by sole meunière and a delicate tarte aux pommes, was exquisite, yet Poirot's mind was elsewhere. He sipped his wine, a fine Bordeaux, and allowed his thoughts to drift to Blackthorn Manor. Was it a grand estate, crumbling under the weight of its own history, or a modern construct, hiding secrets behind a facade of opulence? The name suggested age, perhaps decay, but Poirot knew better than to trust assumptions. After dinner, he retired to his study, where a fire crackled in the grate, casting flickering shadows across the room. He lit a cigarette, not his usual habit, but a rare indulgence. When his mind was restless and settled into an armchair, the letter lay on the table beside him, its words imprinted in his memory. "Defies reason," he repeated softly, exhaling a thin stream of smoke. "We shall see, mon ami, we shall see." Sleep came easily to Poirot, for he was a man who trusted his instincts and his method. He awoke at precisely 7, as was his custom, and performed his morning ablutions with the same care he applied to his investigations. His moustache received particular attention, waxed and curled to perfection. By 8, he was dressed in a travelling suit of dove grey, his overcoat draped over one arm, and his hat, a sleek fedora, held in his hand. George had placed the travelling case by the door, along with a small valise containing Poirot's essentials, his notebook, a fountain, pen, and a selection of herbal tisanes to ensure his comfort in unfamiliar surroundings. At 9 o'clock, as promised, a car arrived. It was a sleek, black Daimler, its polished surface gleaming despite the persistent drizzle. The driver, a taciturn man in a peaked cap, emerged to open the door. His face was unremarkable, his manner professional but distant. "Monsieur Poirot?" he asked, though it was clear he knew the answer. "Oui, c'est moi," Poirot replied, stepping forward. He handed his case to the driver, who stowed it in the boot and settled into the rear seat. The interior was luxurious, upholstered in soft leather with a faint scent of lavender. Poirot noted the absence of any insignia or monogram that might hint at the car's owner. Another deliberate omission, he thought. The journey began in silence, the only sound the rhythmic swish of the wipers and the hum of the engine. Poirot gazed out the window, watching London's familiar streets give way to the open countryside. The rain had eased, but the sky remained heavy with clouds, casting a pall over the rolling hills and hedgerows. He tried to engage the driver in conversation, but the man's responses were curt, limited to affirmations or deflections. "My instructions are to deliver you to the manor, sir," he said when Poirot pressed for details. "Nothing more." "Very well," Poirot said, leaning back. "I shall reserve my questions for those who await me." The journey stretched on for hours, the landscape growing wilder and more desolate. The roads narrowed, winding through dense woods and past crumbling stone walls. Poirot's sense of direction, though not infallible, suggested they were heading north, perhaps toward the moors. At last, as the light began to fade, the car turned onto a gravel drive flanked by ancient oaks. Their branches formed a canopy overhead, their leaves whispering in the wind. Ahead, Blackthorn Manor loomed into view. It was a formidable structure, a sprawling edifice of grey stone that seemed to grow out of the earth itself. Its towers and gables were shrouded in mist, giving it the appearance of a castle from a Gothic tale. Ivy clung to its walls, and the windows, narrow and leaded, glinted like watchful eyes. Poirot felt a shiver, not of fear, but of anticipation. This was no ordinary place. It was a stage, set for a drama of unparalleled complexity. The car came to a halt before the manor's entrance, a massive oak door studded with iron. The driver opened Poirot's door, retrieved his case, and gestured toward the steps. "You're expected, sir," he said, then returned to the car without another word. Poirot watched as the Daimler disappeared down the drive, its taillights swallowed by the gathering dusk. He turned to the door, his hand resting lightly on the handle of his valise. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called, a sharp, mournful sound that echoed in the stillness. Poirot straightened his shoulders, adjusted his hat, and knocked. The door creaked open, revealing a butler whose gaunt face and stooped posture suggested a life spent in service to this ancient house. His eyes, pale and watery, regarded Poirot with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. "Monsieur Hercule Poirot?" he asked, his voice dry as parchment. "Oui," Poirot replied, stepping into the foyer. The interior was as grand as the exterior was foreboding. A cavernous hall with a soaring ceiling, its walls adorned with portraits of stern-faced ancestors. A chandelier hung above, its crystals catching the flickering light of sconces. The air was cold, despite the fire burning in a massive hearth. "I am Grayson, the butler," the man said, closing the door with a thud that reverberated through the hall. "The master is expecting you, along with the other guests. If you'll follow me, I'll show you to your room." "Merci," Poirot said, his eyes already scanning the surroundings. The portraits, he noted, were uniformly dour, their subjects clad in attire spanning centuries. One, a woman with piercing. Chapter 2. Shadows of Blackthorn. The air within Blackthorn Manor was heavy, as though the weight of centuries pressed against the walls, whispering secrets to those who dared to listen. Hercule Poirot followed the butler, Grayson, through the cavernous foyer, his polished shoes clicking against the black and white marble floor. The sound echoed, sharp and solitary, in the vastness of the hall. The portraits on the walls seemed to watch him, their painted eyes glinting in the flickering light of the sconces. Poirot's own eyes, keen and unyielding, took in every detail. The faded grandeur of the tapestries, the intricate carvings on the banister of the grand staircase, and the faint scent of mildew that lingered beneath the polish and wax. Grayson moved with the slow, deliberate pace of a man accustomed to serving without question. His stooped frame and ashen complexion suggested a life tethered to this house, perhaps longer than was healthy. Poirot, ever observant, noted the butler's hands, gnarled, with knuckles like knots in old wood, and the way they trembled slightly as he gestured toward the staircase. "Your room is on the second floor, Monsieur Poirot," Grayson said, his voice a dry rustle. "The other guests are already settled. Dinner will be served at 8 in the dining hall." "Merci, Monsieur Grayson," Poirot replied, his tone polite but probing. "And how many guests are we to expect this evening?" Grayson paused, his pale eyes flickering toward Poirot before returning to the stairs. "5, sir, besides yourself. The master has been particular about the company." "Particular," Poirot repeated softly, filing the word away. "And the master, Lord Reginald Ashby, I presume. He is the one who summoned us." Grayson's lips tightened, a fleeting shadow crossing his face. "Indeed, sir. Lord Ashby will join you at dinner, if you'll follow me." Poirot nodded, his moustache twitching as he suppressed a smile. The butler's reticence was as telling as any confession. There was something amiss in Blackthorn Manor, something that made even its servants wary. Poirot's curiosity, already piqued by the cryptic letter, now burned brighter. He adjusted his grip on his valise and ascended the staircase, his movements precise despite the weight of his travelling case. The second floor was a labyrinth of corridors, their walls lined with more portraits and faded wallpaper that peeled at the edges. The air grew colder as they ventured deeper, the warmth of the foyer left behind. Grayson led Poirot to a door of dark oak, its surface carved with a pattern of thorny vines that matched the watermark on the letter. "Your room, sir," the butler said, producing a key from his pocket. "I trust you'll find it satisfactory." Poirot stepped inside, his eyes sweeping the chamber. It was spacious, with a 4-poster bed draped in burgundy velvet, a mahogany writing desk and a fireplace where a modest blaze crackled. The windows, tall and narrow, overlooked the manor's grounds, though the view was obscured by the gathering dusk and a veil of mist. The room was comfortable, even luxurious, yet there was an undercurrent of neglect, a faint dustiness, a creak in the floorboards that spoke of a house no longer cherished. "Most satisfactory," Poirot said, setting his valise on the bed. "And the other guests? Where might I find them before dinner?" Grayson hesitated, his fingers tightening around the key. "They are likely in their rooms, sir, or perhaps in the drawing-room on the ground floor. I can direct you there after you've settled." "No, no," Poirot said, waving a hand. "I shall find my way. A little exploration does wonders for the appetite, n'est-ce pas?" The butler's expression remained impassive, but Poirot sensed a flicker of unease. "As you wish, sir. Dinner at 8. With a curt nod, Grayson withdrew, the door closing softly behind him. Poirot wasted no time. He unpacked his case with his usual efficiency, arranging his toiletries on the dresser and hanging his spare suit in the wardrobe. His notebook, that faithful companion, was placed on the writing desk, ready to receive his observations. He opened it to a fresh page and jotted a single word: suspicion. The manner, the butler, the cryptic summons, all pointed to a mystery that was already taking shape, like a shadow cast before the light. Satisfied, Poirot adjusted his tie, smoothed his moustache, and left the room. The corridor was silent, save for the distant creak of the house settling. He chose a direction at random, his senses alert to any sound or movement. The portraits continued to line the walls, their subjects growing more severe with each step. One, a man in Elizabethan attire, bore a striking resemblance to the watermark's thorned vine, his hand resting on a staff entwined with it. Poirot paused, his mind cataloguing the detail. A family crest, perhaps, or a symbol with deeper significance. As he rounded a corner, he heard voices, low, urgent, and unmistakably tense. They came from a partially open door at the end of the corridor. Poirot approached with the stealth of a cat, his small stature and light step making him all but invisible in the dim light. He stopped just outside the door, his ear attuned to the conversation within. "Absurd to think he'd invite us here for nothing," a woman's voice said, sharp and clipped. "Ashby never does anything without a purpose, and I don't trust it." "Calm yourself, Eleanor," a man replied, his tone soothing but tinged with irritation. "You're seeing conspiracies where there are none. He's probably just lonely, rattling around in this mausoleum." "Lonely?" The woman, Eleanor, laughed, a brittle sound. "Reginald Ashby doesn't know the meaning of the word. He's playing a game, and we're the pawns." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. A game, indeed. He leaned closer, careful not to betray his presence. But the conversation shifted as another voice, a third, softer and hesitant, joined in. I don't like this place," the new voice said, unmistakably female and younger. "It feels wrong, like something's watching us." "Oh, for heaven's sake, Clara," Eleanor snapped. "Stop being so fanciful. It's just an old house." Poirot made a mental note of the names, Eleanor and Clara, and the dynamics at play. Eleanor was dominant, perhaps domineering, while Clara was nervous, impressionable. The man, whose name remained unknown, seemed to mediate, though his patience was wearing thin. Before Poirot could glean more, footsteps approached from within, and he stepped back, assuming an air of casual curiosity as the door swung open. A woman stood before him, tall and angular, with auburn hair pinned tightly at the nape of her neck. Her eyes, a piercing grey, narrowed as they met Poirot's. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice the same sharp tone he'd heard moments ago. Poirot bowed slightly, his manner impeccable. "Hercule Poirot, at your service, madam. I am a guest, newly arrived, and thought to explore before dinner. And you, I presume, are Eleanor Vance?" she said, her tone softening only marginally. "You're the detective, aren't you? Ashby mentioned you. Did he?" Poirot's eyebrows rose, though his expression remained neutral. "And what did Lord Ashby say of me?" Eleanor's lips pursed, as though she regretted her words. "Only that you were particular, a man who notices things." "An accurate description, I hope," Poirot said, his eyes twinkling. "And might I ask who else is in your company?"